back to the Under 24 podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy, and I'm joined, as always, by my co host, Jason. How you doing, man?
Pretty good, bro. How about you?
Doing good. So let's get into it. So on Monday, the Kansas City Chiefs and QB quarterback Patrick Mahomes have agreed to terms on a 10-year extension worth $503 million. He gets $477 million in guaranteed money and gets the ability to opt out at multiple points in the deal. Mahomes will also have a no trade clause. This makes Patrick Mahomes the highest paid sports player ever. He is the he is an MVP and a reigning champ. But did Patrick Mahomes deserve this money?
Yes, I think he did. And frankly, I think he could have asked for even more, and the Chiefs would have given it to him. But let's wait for a minute. The real guaranteed amount is $140 million, which is the injury guarantee in case he gets injured throughout his career. But that's all that's guaranteed. And he has to earn the rest of the contract, which is $363 million. But I think he probably will earn it. I think he will earn it, but still, it's not guaranteed. And the 10-year deal allows the Chiefs to build the team around him for the foreseeable future. And he's an MVP, he's a Super Bowl champ, and he's 24 years old. And that's why I think he deserves this money.
Yeah, I think he's one of the top QBs right now, and he can be the best quarterback maybe in 5 or 6 years. He's like you mentioned, he's only 24 years old. So in 10 years he'll be 34, which is he will still be a good player, and he'll be a little bit past his prime, but he will still be that player that we all see. He can still grow, because at 30 is when you're at your prime. So he has a lot of growing. He can grow a lot, and he can become that best quarterback that we are all envisioning. And even though he did take up almost a quarter of the cap space, I think the Chiefs are confident that they will be successful with all their weapons they have, like Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, and Travis Kelce. Those are all players that they think that they can keep for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Mentioning about all the weapons that he has, do you think that he has the best supporting cast around him compared to all the other NFL QBs?
I mean, yeah, he's probably like has the one of the best cores, like weapons that he has, because you look at the Buccaneers, they have a lot of weapons, and then the Chiefs maybe right there with them. I think they're one of their top five teams that are the best teams, and I think they can go for the repeat this year and go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I believe that too. Do you think that this will hurt them, like in other aspects of of their team, like defense? Because last time we checked, their defense wasn't really too good, but they did have many core pieces. But I don't know if they'll be able to keep those core pieces because of all the money that they spent on Patrick Mahomes. Do you think that'll be a concern?
I mean, I think this was a team effort. So I think the Chiefs realized that Patrick Mahomes took 1/4 of the salary cap, but I think that's all worth it, because I think the Chiefs think that they can be able to keep those pieces, even though they do want that money. I think they'll be able to keep them, and they can get draft picks to draft younger players and get them cheap, so that their defense can be good as well.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
All right. So many QBs are still young, and they'll be looking to get a big payday soon. So how does this affect future deals of other young QBs?
Well, let's get this out of the way. Patrick Mahomes is in his own world when it comes to talent and his ability on the football field. And because of that, I think he'll be the only one to get paid this much out of all the QBs that need to get paid. And let's look at each of them. When you're thinking of all the other quarterbacks that need to get paid, you think of three of them: Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, and Dak Prescott. I think Lamar Jackson is going to get paid big money if he wins Super Bowl this next year, but I don't think it'll be Mahomes' money. Mahomes is going to earn if it's fully guaranteed, if he earns all of his money, throughout the contract, he'll be earning $50 million a year. But I don't think Lamar Jackson is going to get that. I think he should expect to get money around $38 to $43 million a year, because the salary cap is always rising with more people watching football. Now, next person that you think of is Deshaun Watson. He really will get paid pretty handsomely, but I personally think that he's underrated. And because I think he's underrated, I also think that he'll be paid a little less than Lamar Jackson, which is around 34 to 38 million. And the last QB that we have to talk about is Dak Prescott. The Dak Prescott situation in Dallas really is a mess. And he was already asking for about $36 million a year before the Mahomes contract, and everyone knew that when the Mahomes contract came out, Dak would be asking for more. So I'm not surprised if he's asking for about $39 million per year now. And it's definitely a tough situation for Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, but they put themselves into this position.
Yeah, I think this impacts many QBs, especially those QBs that you mentioned, those three QBs. And Dak Prescott was in his negotiations, and his contract, his asking price just went up by about 3 to 5 million, because if he was asking he's probably asking about in the high 30s, so about 36 to 40 million, and that just went up. And the longer that they wait, the more they have to pay Dak Prescott. So now I think it's a little bit too late to pay Dak, but it's they have to pay him as soon as possible. But for other QBs like Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson, those players are really good, but they're not anywhere near like Patrick Mahomes type money. Like you said, they're not worth $50 million, and I don't think it's worth the risk for these teams to pay them about 50 million. But for Lamar Jackson, I think he can get about 40 to 45 million, and for Deshaun Watson, he can get a little bit lower than that, maybe from anywhere near 38 to 42 million. Those are all great QBs who have to get paid soon. And with this Patrick Mahomes deal, I think the asking price will go up for them, and that they will get paid.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. But I think the reason Deshaun Watson won't get as much money as he's worth, like I said before, is because he's underrated. And I know a lot of people that are watching this are going to be like, Deshaun Watson's underrated? How? Well, let's take a look. When you're looking at the top three QBs, who would you say? Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. Then it would be a mix of like Russell Wilson or someone else. But I don't think Deshaun Watson is in most people's top three, and I feel like that's a problem. Actually, I feel like he might be better than Lamar Jackson. He can't use his legs nearly as well, but he can make all the throws. He can't use his legs significantly well, not as good as Lamar Jackson, but he can still use them. And he's clutch. He brings his team wins, and he helps them through a lot of other aspects of the game. I think that because people don't rank him as one of the top QBs, even though they all know he's very good, I think that's why he'll get paid significantly less than Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, also another factor for Deshaun Watson is that his weapons are not they don't know if they'll be able to keep their weapons long time. Like you just saw this summer, um what was his name? The wide receiver,
DeAndre Hopkins.
DeAndre Hopkins.
What
He
a
got traded.
terrible trade.
He got
Terrible
traded.
trade.
So I don't know if the Texans will be able to keep their weapons and pay Deshaun Watson as much as he wants.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Do you feel like the Houston Texans are actually a Super Bowl contender?
Not at this moment. Maybe if they get a good player soon in free agency or in through the draft. But this year, I don't think that they're legitimate Super Bowl contenders. I think there's other teams that could possibly beat them in the playoffs if they do make it there.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
All right, so let's go. Let's change topics and let's go to the NBA. And there's been reports of a second bubble that is coming to Chicago. This bubble will have the 8 teams that did not make the 22-team format, who's competing for the championship. These rumors say that the bubble might be in early September, and there will be like summer league games with almost all players on the roster, all 15 players playing the game. So is the second bubble worth the risk?
Um, I think it's tough to choose, but I would have to say a slight no. And he, uh, the bubble will help with two things: the salary cap and the development and on-court chemistry for these teams. And the salary cap, the reason it'll help the salary cap is because it won't take as hard of a hit if people watch the games, the second bubble games on TV, and that'll help the NBA so they can collect the TV money from the broadcasters, and that'll help with the salary cap situation with for a bunch of teams like the Warriors who have who are well above the salary cap. That'll help a lot of teams when they're pursuing people in free agency, players in free agency. And along with this, I think some teams could use some more time to develop their players, like the Warriors and the Knicks, and to help with their on-court chemistry, like the Timberwolves. Because with the Timberwolves, D'Angelo Russell and Malik Beasley came there of late. They play less than 20 games with the Timberwolves, so I feel like they would be able to gel better if they get more experience and potentially do better next season. I would say that these are very worthwhile reasons to play in the second bubble, but as we all know, the risk of coronavirus is just too big of a concern for me.
Yeah, I think I don't really think it's worth the risk because you got to realize that the teams that are playing, it's the Hawks, the Timberwolves, Warriors, Pistons, Knicks. Those are all teams that are not those are teams that don't have star players. There's only there's players like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, but those players, the Warriors have said that they're not going to be playing, and the only good players that you'll be able to watch will be like D'Angelo Russell and Trey Young. So for the NBA, I don't think it's worth it financially because they won't be able to get enough money. And you also got to realize the timing in the where when this is. This is in September, and this is when the playoffs will happen in Orlando for the other 22 teams. So more NBA fans will be watching those playoff games instead of these summer league games, if you say, because these players will play these games, and it's not worth anything. So, you know, they're not going to make the playoffs or anything, and they're not going to win anything. So for them, it's just more of a chemistry thing, and for them to gel together. And you also got to realize the coronavirus that the cases are getting higher almost every day in America. So I don't know if you want to fly these players to Chicago, and if the players do get the coronavirus, you just cancel it and waste all that money.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Speaking of on-court and gelling, I know we'll talk about this in the weeks coming, but do you think that the Timberwolves or teams like the Timberwolves or that like recently traded for players, do you think that they need this time to gel? Is it necessary for them?
I think yeah, I think they want this time because they have traded for a lot of players like D'Angelo Russell and Amari Spellman and other teams like the Atlanta Hawks who traded for Clint Capella. Those teams do might need time to get gel together because you when in the off season it's basically only a month to sign players, and then training camp starts the very next week after free agency, and it's only about 2 weeks long before the season resumes. So I don't think that's enough time for those other teams, the 8 teams that did not make it, for them to gel together. But for I think it's best not to have a bubble for now, it's safety wise.
Yeah, I think until the coronavirus cases lowered and the vaccine comes out, I don't think it's a good idea to have the second bubble either.
Yeah. So even though these games do not count and they have no meaning, some teams will be able to play their young players or get chemistry going for next season, like we mentioned. But who do you think will benefit the most from this bubble?
Well, if we're talking about the team, I know I've talked about them a lot this past segment, but I think it's the Warriors. And I think it's the Warriors because there really isn't another team to pick other than the Timberwolves. But I think the Warriors will benefit more from it than the Timberwolves because they're looking to compete for a title next year. And as most of us know, they don't have, aside from their star players, they don't really have good role players to play with in the season. And I think these games will allow these players a chance to prove themselves and show why they should be on the Warriors roster next season. And although a lot of people have ruled out Klay Thompson and Steph Curry coming back, Klay Thompson has said he's ready to return. And even though it's unlikely, if they do return, I think that can help with them being able to gel with these possible role players. And that's why I think the Warriors would be winners of the second bubble.
Yeah, I think teams with younger players and teams that have traded for other new players, like we just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, that they will benefit the most because they will need to get their chemistry going together. They need to learn the plays, and for those teams like the Atlanta Hawks, the Golden State Warriors, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the Detroit Pistons, those teams have all traded for players, and they need those players to really gel together for next season because next season is only about 3 months away, which is not that far. And you also got to realize that these the players that have traded for are younger players that they will get more time playing together, like the Warriors. They traded or their players were hurt, like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. So other players got to step up, like Eric Pascal, Kai Bowman. Those players, it can help those players as they can become bench solid role players. Like you mentioned, they can be Warriors can be championship contenders next year, and that will really help the team. But like I said before, I don't think it's really worth the risk financially and health wise for those teams.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Do you think, like what I said before, do you think the Timberwolves would need this time to gel for D'Angelo Russell and Karl-Anthony Towns because those are the two stars on that team and they're already very good friends. Do you think that's the most important priority for some teams like them?
Yeah, I think they need to uh, really like know the system and know what to expect in every situation. And for those players, they at least they had training camp this past couple of weeks for those teams that did not make the playoffs. So at least they got that time. But I think it's really beneficial for them to play or scrimmage or something so that they can just learn to play and get chemistry going.
Yeah, I agree there. One last question for you. Do you think teams like the Cavaliers really need any of this time because it's not like they're really going anywhere in any specific direction and they haven't traded for any players? Do you think that they really need this second bubble?
Um, Teams like the Cavaliers, I mean, you saw after their coach John Beeline got fired that their record went up about five wins in less than 10 games. So that really helped them. And for them, they like you mentioned, like the team like the Warriors who have young players that those young players can really step up. Players like Alfonso McKinney, who's on that team, and other players who are struggling, like first round pick Darius Garland, who is not doing well, that they can improve their game in the bubble and just learn from other teams how they play.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
All right, so let's move on from this topic. Let's go to the series that we have started. We started a series, and we'll talk about 8 teams that did not make the 22-team format and how they can improve. This week, we'll talk about the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks did not have a great season this year as they were only 20-47 before the season got suspended and then ultimately ended for them. They had an all-star starter in Trae Young and many other young players like Cam Reddish, John Collins, and DeAndre Hunter. They also acquired Clint Capella from the Houston Rockets at the trade deadline. This team looks good on paper, but can they make the playoffs next season?
um, as currently constructed, I would say maybe. And here's my reason why. The Eastern Conference will have a race for the 8th seed. And that's because there are already 7 teams that look like playoff locks, that look like playoff locks because of how they're currently constructed. If they don't have any significant injuries, you're looking at teams like the Bucks, the Celtics, the Raptors, the Pacers, the Nets, teams like that. I feel like they could definitely make the playoffs. You look at the Heat as well, but I think the Hawks will be in that 8th seed race if everything goes right for them, and I think they'll be in that race with the teams like the Magic and the Wizards, unless the Wizards get John Wall back like he was before. And I think that they have all the talent that they need to make the playoffs. And along with that, their players have gotten another year of development, like including the rookies Cam Reddish and DeAndre Hunter. They've gotten more time to gel with each other. And I know how you say that they only won 20 games. They were 20-47. But we have to remember, John Collins was out for for about 30 or more games this season. And that definitely hurt them because he is their second best player behind Trae Young. So I think that if he was there, I think they could have won more games and could have stayed possibly right behind teams that were in this playoff race. And along with that, they also have a very good coach in Lloyd Pierce. He's someone who can lead them to the playoffs, but I just don't know that they can take that next step because they were also expected to take that next step this year. So I don't know if they can or not, make the playoffs or not.
Yeah, I don't know if they can make the playoffs next season. But the team they have now, most of their team is young players like Cam Reddish, Trae Young, Kevin Herter, DeAndre Hunter, and those players haven't had real experience, and they haven't had really they haven't experienced that like wins and stuff because they're only 20-47. And you look at last year and they had 29 wins. And I know that the season got suspended and John Collins was out, but that's if they played the full season, they would have almost had the exact same record as they did last year. And that just shows that they probably won't make the playoffs next season. And they need I think they need more of veteran leadership like Vince Carter, who just retired, and uh, the players that have experienced playoffs, or older players that who are still good and that they can produce for the team. But you also got to realize that these young players, that if if they don't develop soon, like Cam Reddish, who he's really kind of disappointed this season. You have to pay these players as soon as possible because players like John
But they're
Collins.
only rookies.
Yeah, but you have to pay them soon because like you look, even though they are young and they are good, you have to pay John Collins. Like, he was a draft pick I think 3 years ago. So I think you have to pay him next season. So I don't know if the cap situation will work out there. So if these players don't develop, you may have to trade them.
Yeah, I guess I could agree with you there, but you did say that they would have the same record as last year. Like I said, John Collins does play a big part of that due to his suspension of 25 games and some injuries. Had he been in those games, I think they would have won about 35 to 40 games, maybe a little less than that. I think they definitely could have done better had John Collins been there, and I think that's a big reason why. I think Cam Reddish didn't have a good enough role with the team, and that's one reason why he didn't do as good. But yeah, they just gotta figure out some things with all these young players, and I think they could potentially make the playoffs if they do.
Yeah, so like I said before, this team is not a great team, even though they have many promising pieces. They can play it safe and develop their young players, or they can try to trade for a third star. So should the Hawks try to trade for a third star, and if so, who should it be?
Well, I think they should trade for someone, but I don't think it should be a third star because if they are trading for a star, they'd have to give up some of their young players, and that would hurt them because all their young players have potential and promise. And I think they need to get someone they can get for cheap and help this team help elevate this team to make the playoffs. And I think they should trade for someone who fits a role player that fits their needs, which are wing defense and the fact that they have a hole at the starting shooting guard position. And what I think they should do is they should slide Cam Reddish into the shooting guard position and then trade for Mikal Bridges, the starting small forward on the Suns. And here's why. He's one of the best wing defenders in basketball. And this is only his second year playing. And with his long arms, he can defend almost anyone. He can defend from the point guard to the power forward position. And I think that's definitely helpful because the Hawks, because of the fact that they have Trae Young on the court, they need someone who can be a good wing defender, just like Klay Thompson is for Steph Curry on the Warriors. Just like that, they need a good defender on the wing so they can cover for Trae Young's bad defense, as he was, people say, the worst defender in the league according to the advanced stats. And along with this, he didn't have a good three-point shot to begin the year, but he's been improving it over the year, shooting 41% from three this season since February, which is actually very good, above the league average percentage by 6%. And I think he could be someone who, with more minutes, could definitely elevate this team and help them make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think for the Atlanta Hawks that they should try to trade for a third star. Like you said, they they do have Trae Young, who's an All Star, and they have a good. They traded for Clint Capella, who's a rim rolling guy and who can help in the paint with blocks and getting boards. Right, and they also have a athletic four in John Collins who can get to the basket whenever he wants, and he's an explosive guy. But they don't really have a reliable shooting guard, like you said. And I think they do need to trade for a starting or I think a star for the Atlanta Hawks. And I'm not saying like elite like Jason Tatum type player, but I'm saying like a guy that's still elite but is not considered that superstar type player. I think they need that type of guy because you look at Trae Young and he's kind of undersized and he needs defensive help. And I think that's what the Hawks are looking for, a two that can shoot the ball and can help with defense and that doesn't need the ball to score. I think Trae Young can be their main primary ball handler, and that this two can just come off screens and shoot it like Klay Thompson has, or doesn't need the ball as often as Trae Young. So the players that come to mind is Drew Holiday. He's a defensive-minded player that can get steals and he can score the ball. Even though he is old, he is still performing at a high level with almost 20 points per game and almost 2 steals per game. He doesn't need the ball as much as other players, and he can also play that backup point guard role when Trae Young is on the bench. So they don't have to really look for a backup point guard role. So for the Atlanta Hawks, they can try to trade for Drew Holiday, but he's a little old. He's a little older, but he's still putting up amazing numbers, like I said. But I think that if they're looking for the perfect player, I think they should try to trade for a young player who is almost exactly like Drew Holiday, and that is Gary Harris. He can defend the ball and shoot the ball, and he just needs touches. I mean, look at 2 years ago when his usage rate was about 20%, and he was shooting. Had 20 points per game. And look at this season, he only had 15 percentage usage rate, and he had 10 points per game. So if you give him the ball a little bit more, I think he can produce for you at a high level, and that can really help the Hawks elevate to the next level with if their players are all healthy and Clint Capella, John Collins, and Trae Young. With all those players that are there, Gary Harris can fit in perfectly and improve their record, and possibly they can make the playoffs next season.
Well, I'm definitely going to disagree with you there, and I have two reasons why. Drew Holiday, if you really want Drew Holiday, you're going to have to pay. You're going to have to give a big haul for Drew Holiday. You're probably going to have to give up either DeAndre Hunter or Cam Reddish, probably a first round draft pick, and probably another role player like their backup centers. And I definitely think that's a problem because if they do that, that means they're sacrificing their future for a player who could leave in free agency in the next 2 years. And I definitely think that's a problem because if they want to be competitive in the long run, which they're going to need because of all the young players they have, they can't sacrifice those good players with so much potential. And then you want to talk about Gary Harris. Gary Harris, his usage rate, you said 20% to 15%. That's only a 5% drop in usage rate. And his points per game were cut in half. Not only that, he's been inefficient from the 3-point line in this past year, and he's shooting around 31 to 32%, which is definitely not good for someone. And he's not really that well known as a defender. So I personally think that they should trade for a cheaper role player that not many people know, so that they'll have to pay a less price. And along with that, I think Mikal Bridges can shoot the ball better and put the ball on the floor better. And because of that, I feel like they should trade for Mikal Bridges instead of someone like Gary Harris or Drew Holiday.
No, look, this is what you got to realize, that the Atlanta Hawks are a young team. In 4 or 5 years, they have to pay their players like John Collins, Cam Reddish, Kevin Huerter, and Trae Young. They all have to pay these players, and those top players like John Collins and Trae Young. Trae Young can get possibly a max deal. John Collins will get somewhere near $20 million, and then that only gives you a little bit of money to spend on other players or trade for. So that's why I think they need to trade for a player right now, because the players are still young, and a player like Cam Reddish, who doesn't really fit the system and who's still young and is still promising, can fit the role can be on another team like the Denver Nuggets. And then Michael Porter Jr. of the Denver Nuggets can slide into that 2 role, and he can have a solidified starting spot for the Denver Nuggets. And this also helps. You said like that he's an inefficient shooting, but you also got to realize that the Denver Nuggets have Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, Paul Millsap, and Michael Porter Jr. All players that need the ball to really play and score. For Gary Harris, if he has the ball just a little bit more, he can get those touches, and he can score and he can shoot the ball. So I think that if they don't trade for a player in the next,
but he can't shoot the ball. That's the problem.
No, he can. He's just that he's not
getting
touches. He can,
but he hasn't. But okay, so his usage rate only dropped 5%, but his points per game dropped 50%. That's 10 times. That's 10 times the value, and I think that's definitely going to be a problem.
But you got to realize who is on the Nuggets. Nuggets are almost championship contenders, and they have players like Nikola Jokic.
And he'll find a way to get Gary Harris the ball if Gary Harris can do well moving off the ball. I don't think, and the problem is if Gary Harris gets too many touches, Trae Young's not going to have enough touches, and I don't think Gary Harris is the playmaker that they need behind Trae Young if they want to give more touches to Gary Harris.
Yeah, but for Gary Harris, he's a guy that can come off the ball, come off screens, and shoot the ball. He's a really good shooter.
So then why isn't he doing that in Denver?
Because he has players like Nikola Jokic, and Nikola Jokic is a really good player, but he's more of like a point forward, point center.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not going to set screens for players to come off the screen and shoot the ball. You look at players like Clint Capella. He can set screens for players, and players can come off those screens and shoot the ball. For Gary Harris, I think that's what he needs. Or if you don't agree with Gary Harris, you can go for a guy like Drew Holiday.
But that'll be too much. He's someone that they'll have to give up too much for. They'll be sacrificing their future.
I think it's worth it though. You look at the Hawks, and they do have a lot of young players on their roster.
But they're not even a playoff team. If they were a playoff team, if they made the 6th seed, if they were about the 5th through 6th seed, I would be totally fine with them trading for Drew Holiday. But they're not even a playoff team, and you want to trade for Drew Holiday?
Drew Holiday or Gary Harris.
Aging player.
Okay, what is Mikal Bridges gonna do? Can you tell me? It's not like Mikal Bridges is like a Jason Tatum type player. He's not gonna do anything for them. And for the Suns, for the Suns, they gotta get some good pieces in return. So what is
but they're not. But that's not. But they're not going to get nearly as much for Mikal. They're not going to give nearly as much for Mikal Bridges as they're going to give for Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday is a bona fide star.
Okay, you look at Cam Reddish. He hasn't really been fit in the system, and he's still young. And he can be shipped to another team like the Denver Nuggets or the
Yeah, but
New Orleans
because of his
Pelicans.
potential,
And
because he's so promising, that's what they need. I think that he can definitely grow in that
no,
system, and
this
I
is
feel
this
like
is
his role hasn't been utilized enough.
no, this is why like they should trade him because he's still, like you said, he is a promising player. And for teams like the New
That they
Orleans
can use
Pelicans
instead of another team.
and the
That
Denver
they can
Nuggets,
use instead of another team,
they would want a player that is promising, like Cam Reddish,
like
who
Gary Harris.
they can trust, and that they can trust. And maybe if Cam
They
Reddish
have
doesn't work
Michael Porter
out, then
Jr.
the
and they're playing him 15, 20 minutes a game.
he's
He's a promising
he's
player.
getting inconsistent minutes.
Yeah,
I've seen
exactly.
Denver. Yeah, so if you trade Gary Harris away, Michael Porter Jr. can slide into that starting role,
But
and he
what
can
about
get
Cam
those.
Reddish then? Cam Reddish is going to be in the same position Michael Porter Jr. was right
Well,
then when Gary Harris was there.
If Cam Reddish proves that he is a good player, then he can possibly be a sixth man or seventh man
If Cam
in the
Reddish
bench.
proves that he can be a good player, he should still be on the Hawks so they can use him as
But you
their
got to
good
realize
player.
he had 1 year to develop himself. And you look at Trae Young last year.
He's a
At
rookie.
at the end of the season, Trae Young last year he was in the he was really efficient. And you realize that,
Exactly.
and you look at
Exactly.
He
You
had
can't give up.
Cam Reddish had all that time to do that. He still hasn't improved. So
So
you're trying
what
to tell
about
me
Brandon?
that
What about
Mikal
Brandon Ingram's story? What about
Brandon.
Brandon Ingram's story?
That's exactly why I'm saying
He wasn't
that
given
you're
the right
exactly proving my point
opportunity.
though. You're proving
No,
my
I'm
point.
not.
If
I'm saying
you
that
traded Brandon Ingram to a new system, he thrived in that system. I think Cam Reddish
no,
can do
he
the
just
same.
needed
And
time and
I
the
think the Hawks. No, you're gonna say he needed time. He had 3 years to do it in LA, and he couldn't be able to do it then.
exactly.
He had 3 different coaches to do it, and he had 3 different systems. He still couldn't get it done.
Exactly. You
So
just
you're telling me
What about Jalen Brown? What about Jalen Brown?
Jalen Brown? You look at Jalen Brown. That was because of Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward.
But
Gordon Hayward was a
they were only there for 2 years. He's been there for 4.
Yeah, okay, but you gotta
And
realize
Kyrie Irving,
Gordon Hayward was supposed to get that starting role, and then Jalen Brown was supposed to come off the bench. And then when
okay.
Kyrie Irving left, a guy that doesn't really mesh with younger players and wants to win, he really developed. And Kemba Walker came a guy that really wants to give the ball to other players. He developed.
Bruh, come on,
So
bro.
you look at a guy like Gary
If
Harris.
Jalen Brown needs time to develop and become a very good player
The
and an
Hawks
all-star
don't
stuff, I
the
think
Hawks don't have
I
time.
think they can wait 2 years for Cam Reddish
No,
to do good.
The
If he,
Hawks can't wait 2 years. That's what you got to realize. They have to pay their young players. There's already
bro, this
playing
isn't
beyond.
the NFL though. This isn't the NFL. In
They
the
have to
NFL,
play
if
their.
we were talking about the NFL, I would agree with you. But the thing is, they have the thing about the NBA is that they have hard cap, they have bird rights, they have restricted free agency, and because of that, they can handle going a little over the cap if
No, they
the
can't
owner
because
is
they have to
willing.
pay their luxury tax, and that's not worth it. You
Yeah,
look
but
at
they
the
still,
players that.
but that's before that. But that's after they get to the hard cap,
Okay,
and I don't
okay.
think that they can get the hard cap with all
So
that.
you're telling me they're going to be able to pay John Collins, Bruno Fernando, Brandon Goodwin, Trevon
Bruno,
Graham,
you're
Kevin
going to
Herter,
pay.
DeAndre Hunter, Damian
Yeah,
Jones, Cam
yeah.
Reddish. You think you
So
can pay all those
okay,
players?
okay. First of all, you're not going to pay Bruno Fernando more than $7 million. You're not going to pay Damian Jones more than $5 to $7 million to their players like that. You're actually proving my point now. They don't have to pay that much money to them. The
How
players
about
that they're
Cam?
going
No,
to have
yes,
to,
they will have to pay them.
if their players keep playing like this, the players that they're going to have to pay, they're going to have to pay Trae Young about $30 million a year. Okay,
He's gonna get a
the
max
salary cap.
contract. He's gonna get a
Yeah, the
max
salary.
contract.
Okay, yeah, about $30 million a year. The salary cap by then will be about $120 million a year. So it's like a fourth of the thing, and that's fine
No, it
because this
won't.
isn't the NFL. Yes, it will. So yeah, the cap is around 110 million. The salary cap is around 100 million
Okay, but
and
you gotta realize
110
that they're
million.
losing. The NBA is losing money right now. So
Yeah,
how
but
are they
in
gonna gain
four or
10
five.
million?
Okay, okay. In 4 or 5 years, the coronavirus should be over. If they're not, I don't know why we will still have an NBA. And if it is, that means the salary cap will only go up. Trae Young will only have to be paid in the next 3 years because they have team options on him for the next 2 years as well. And because of that, they'll be able to pay him in the long run. Now, I'm open to trading for Drew Holiday or Gary Harris if Cam Reddish doesn't prove himself in 2 years. So I'm saying if he doesn't prove himself by next season, he could be on the trading block for Gary Harris or Drew Holiday. But since he hasn't what about DeAndre Hunter? DeAndre Hunter hasn't been the best, but we're not talking about him, right?
DeAndre Hunter, he's been really good. He can get boards for you and he can score for you. I think DeAndre Hunter, he still has to prove stuff, but he's been really good this rookie year for a rookie.
Yeah, all Cam Reddish needs is that correct opportunity that the Atlanta Hawks can find, and I feel like with the coach like Lloyd Pierce, they'll be able to find a way to utilize him.
No, I think Lloyd Pierce has. I think they should fire Lloyd Pierce because they need a coach that can develop these players.
Oh,
Because they've been at the bottom of
you
the
said they
standing for
should
3 years.
fire Lloyd. You want them to? Okay, come on, bro. Come on.
Okay, you look at Lloyd Pierce. What is his record the past 3 years?
It's the Hawks.
It's the Hawks, exactly. They have an all-star starter. They have an all-star starter in Trae Young.
Hold on. So you're saying if Greg Popovich came to the Hawks, they would be able to make the fourth seed, they would be able to make the playoffs? I think they would, but they wouldn't be able to get to the fourth or sixth seed. And because of that, I think
in a weak East, they could.
Yeah, in a weak East. Now they have the Milwaukee Bucks, the Indiana Pacers, the Heat, the Celtics, the Raptors, the Nets. So much. The East is loaded now, unlike how it was 2 years ago. The East is very good, and because of that, I don't think that they would be able to. Even with Greg Popovich, they wouldn't be able to lock up any seed unless it was the 8th seed or the 7th seed.
Financially, the Hawks won't be able to pay all these players, like you said. But
Only time will tell.
Only
time will tell. And they have 4 to 5 years. If you look at Cam Reddish and DeAndre Hunter, if they accept his team options, they'll both have 4 years that they need to pay him. 4 years. That may not be a lot of time in the NFL, but in the NBA,
John Collins, he will get about 20 to 25 million.
He's going to get paid.
Clint Capella is
25 million.
Clint Capella is getting paid 15 to 20 million in the next 3 years.
But how long is contract? But how for the next 3 years, right?
For the next 3 years. Okay, you look at
John
guys
Collins,
like Dwayne Dedman.
I think John Collins is worth about what's it called? To $20 million a year. Trae Young's worth about $30 million. That's $50 million plus the other $20 million for the Clint Capella, 15 to $20 million. That's about $70 million. Then you still have $50 million left in the salary cap.
Then you have Dwayne Dedman. Dwayne Dedman is making $15 million.
Yeah, but for how long? He's making it for about 2 years, right?
2 years. 2 more years.
Yeah, 2 years. And by that time, his deal will be over, and they still have Trae Young, DeAndre Hunter, and Cam Reddish on their rookie contracts.
No, they won't.
And Kevin Huerter as well.
Kevin Huerter's contract will be up in 2 years. DeAndre Bembry, you have to also pay him about $10 million.
It'll be over in 2022.
How about DeAndre Bembry? How much are you going to pay him?
Okay. How many points does DeAndre and Bembry
DeAndre Bembry has been underrated player for the Hawks.
Yeah, and because of that, most underrated players are paid less. So I think he's worth, because of his underrated value, he'll be worth about $8 million a year.
But that's $8 million.
Because no one's going to pay him more than $7 million to $8 million a year. That's the most that he will get paid, and he'll probably get paid less.
Okay, we're gonna go to the next topic, but that's take too much time. Only time will tell what will happen in the future.
Yeah.
So before the NBA season got suspended, we saw many players getting their groove and having an amazing year that no one expected. This can also happen in Orlando. Many players have been working on their game and improving. They can break out and help the team down the stretch. So which player do you think will break out in Orlando?
Well, I'm going to have to go with the starting center for the Boston Celtics, Daniel Theis. He's been averaging 9 points a game, 7 rebounds a game, and a block per game in just 23.8 minutes. And I think he'll definitely be seeing around 32 minutes 30 to 32 minutes in the playoffs. And I think he'll perform better statistically because of how many minutes he's going to get. And I think he's going to show out on defense for the Celtics because they'll probably be going against bigs like Joel Embiid and Pascal Siakam. And he's someone other teams won't game plan for. And because of that, I feel like he's going to surprise a lot of people during this Orlando postseason.
I think for me, I agree with you and Daniel Theis, but I think for me, it's got to be a player like Karis LeVert. You look at the Nets team; they've lost almost all their players, and now this year, Karis LeVert can really improve his game. He's in the past games before the season got suspended. He had 51 points, 30 points, 25 points. So that just proves that he is a really good player and that he can prove himself without Kyrie Irving. or players like DeAndre Jordan, Spencer Dinwiddie, that he can break out and have an amazing year, and that they can um, get a game from a team in the playoffs. And
Yeah,
another,
but the problem is he's not going to have enough help around him, in my opinion. You see, the Nets just signed Jamal Crawford and Michael Beasley, but I don't think that he's going to have enough help around him, and teams are going to be looking to put their best defensive players on him. I think that will be an issue.
no, I think for them that they still have good players like Joe Harris, and they're not as good as they were before all their players got opted out, but I think he can still do good with the team he has now in Jared Allen, and they have other players like Chris Chioza, who has really proved himself that he can be a good player in the league. So players like that, I think they can. He can still be a good player. He won't be good as with other players like Spencer Dinwiddie, but I think he can still be good. Another player I think is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He was really good before the season got suspended, and he got his groove in with CP3 and Dennis Schroeder, and I think he can still improve in the playoffs. And when they get to the playoffs, and that they can be, um, they can the Oklahoma City Thunder can be a hard team to beat in the playoffs. They might take a game or two from or whatever team they're facing in the playoffs. And for Shai Alexander, he has proved that he can become an elite player and he can be an all-star in maybe next year or 2 years. So that those two players, I think that they'll break out in Orlando and have a phenomenal year.
I agree with you, kind of, but the problem is they'll be facing teams like the Rockets, and because the Rockets will probably lock up that sixth seed, and because of that, unless he plays very good defense on James Harden or Russell Westbrook, I don't think that he could break out in it. And because he doesn't have the most reliable 3-point shot, I think that could definitely be an issue because of the tougher competition that he'll be facing now that the the 8 worst teams in the NBA have been eliminated. And
Yeah,
I think that'll be a problem for him. But for me, the Daniel Tice situation, I think that he will break out because he has somewhat broken out this year. And like I said, he's been averaging 9 to 10 points a game and 7 rebounds and a block in just 24 minutes a game. And they're going to lift that up because in the playoffs your rotations just get smaller. And so he'll be playing about 32 minutes a game. And he's been going against bigs like Joel Embiid and Pascal Siakam. And while most people might think that's a bad matchup for him, he's been doing already very well against them when they played in the regular season. And because of that, I think that he'll surprise people and break out this postseason.
yeah, I think Daniel Tice will be a really good player for the Celtics in the playoffs and down the stretch. While some players have taken a step up, some players have had a disappointing season. These these players need to step up for their teams so that they can go far in the playoffs and possibly win a championship. So, which player do you think needs to step up for their team?
I think it's Kyle Kuzma. And when I look at Kyle Kuzma, he kind of had a down year this past year. And if the Lakers want to beat someone like the Clippers, they'll need that third star, Kuzma, to step up. And he's done worse in the smaller role compared to last year. Last year he averaged 18 points a game. Now he's averaging 12.5 points a game, and he shot just 42% from the field and just 30% from three, down from the 33% last year and 36% from his rookie year. And I don't think that's definitely not gonna cut it if the Lakers want to have championship aspirations because teams like the Clippers have a lot of depth and they already have star power as well. And if the Lakers want to win a championship, he's going to need to step his game up. And if he doesn't, I think that they're going to be leaving the bubble early.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on Kyle Kuzma that he needs to step his game up, and we thought that he would be an elite player this year. You look at 2 years ago when he was a rookie, we thought that he would be an all star, and we thought that he was better than Jason Tatum. But Kyle Kuzma hasn't had a good year, because you got to look at the factors though that Anthony Davis is there and he has taken more of the load at the 4 spot. So Kyle Kuzma hasn't had that much time, but he also has to prove that he is a good player, especially with Avery Bradley out. That really that's a lot, about 10 points per game lost there. And Kyle Kuzma needs to get those points. I don't think J.R. Smith will be able to fit in right away. So for Kyle Kuzma, he knows the system. He knows how to play with the team. He needs to really step up there. But another player, I think, is Eric Bledsoe. He hasn't been really good in the playoffs. And you look at him and he shoots 20, 230% from three, and compared to his 36% from three in the regular season. So you look at a guy like Eric Bledsoe. He's averaging almost six. He was averaging 16 points last year, and now this year last postseason he was only averaging 13 points per game, and all his numbers went down. His assist, his field goal percentages, 3-point percentage. So if the Milwaukee Bucks need to or want to get to the NBA championship this year, I think Eric Bledsoe needs to step up.
I think Eric Bledsoe is a good choice. Do you think Eric Bledsoe will step up because of how he's performed over the past two postseasons with the Bucks?
I mean, I think he will do a little better, but Bucks do have other players that they can rely on to get scoring and assist on, but they don't have really a backup primary ball handler. So for the Milwaukee Bucks, they need to kind of rely or trust Eric Bledsoe in the clutch, especially in clutch situations. I know Giannis usually has the ball in his hands, but for a guy like Eric Bledsoe, he needs to step up his game and show and prove that he can become he's a good player in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with you. So for Kyle Kuzma, I think the most important thing for him to do this postseason is to just shoot the ball better. If he can shoot the ball better, I think they already have their ball handlers. I think if he can shoot the ball better, I think that'll be very key to their success. What do you think is the most important thing for Eric Bledsoe to do this season, this postseason, to help the Milwaukee Bucks win? Is it shoot, dribble, play make?
I don't think Eric Bledsoe needs to really shoot. I mean, look at his field goal percentage the past 2 years when he's in the playoffs, and he shot. Let me see. He's shot 40% from uh, in field goal, and in 3-point percentage, he shot a horrible 31% 2 years ago, and only 23% last year. So I don't think he needs to really shoot because they have other shooters like Kyle Korver and Wesley Matthews. I think for Eric Bledsoe, he needs to pass the ball, and he needs to be a guy that can create shots for other people, because that has also went down for him the past two postseasons for him. So for a guy like Eric Bledsoe, I think he needs to pass the ball to players like Chris Middleton, who can shoot the ball really well, and a guy like Brook Lopez, who can post up and make good plays.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Do you think Brook Lopez is someone that they're going to lean on in the playoffs?
Yeah, especially on defense. I think that they need his presence on the block whenever players like Joel Embiid or Bam Adebayo are coming at him. I think the Bucks really need him, and I think he has really proven in the playoffs that he's kind of revived his career in Milwaukee. So for the Bucks, I think they can trust Brook Lopez in the playoffs.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that take.
Yeah, so thank you for listening to the Under 24 podcast. Remember, we post every Friday on this channel. Make sure to subscribe and share this video as well. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see y'all next week.